Hi everyone, Jason here from spiritualbabies.net. You know, I'm sure, Rabbi Joshua Neely, who we've covered a ton of stuff with already. We're starting a new series where we're going to go through what are called the minor prophets. This possibly could take the rest of our natural lives. There's so many of them, and some of them quite short, but some of them are a bit longer. We are going to be covering literally them line by line and trying to make sure that we're reading out everything that we're talking about. We're not going to be skipping. And we hope you enjoy it. So thank you for leading me through this. There's no way I could do this on my own, Rabbi. And first, can you give us a little information about, because what I was interested in, actually just kind of my first cursory reading through the first book of the chapter 1 of Hosea is that we are finding characters which are common in some other bigger brand prophets. So Hezekiah and Ahaz, for example, they seem to have popped up in other places. So is this a landscape where there are more than one prophet wandering around giving their prophecies?
Exactly right. The prophets often functioned concurrently, and to go back to your labeling of them as the minor prophets, which I know is the normal way that they are viewed, it's nothing about the degree or the nature of their prophecy. It has to do with the amount of material that we have left of their prophecy. So they're minor because we have only small pieces of what they did and said. It's not that their message was somehow less important than the major prophets. Your Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel, we've got tons of material from each of them. And from each of these guys, we've only got a little. So that makes them less represented, but it doesn't make them less important. But they worked at the same time as many of the other major prophets. And many of them worked at the same time with each other, some in the northern kingdom, some in the southern kingdom. And they each had their own message to give. They each had their own visions to share. And that was the nature of their prophecy.
I'm also curious as well, and I want to get into some of the text today, but I have some questions. If you were, you're a guy in that period, and you go to sleep, and you have this amazing dream in which you believe that God speaks to you. Often we are told that kind of personal revelation isn't the way to go, right? So when God speaks to Israel, he makes sure that everybody knows that's happening, and then they all say, Moses, you go and we can't do this, you have to do it. But they know that it's happening because they all get to see. If you are a person and you think that God has spoken to you, how do people kind of accept that person's message, especially if it's one where you can't really prove where you're coming from, and it's something that is going to happen in the future? Are there many, for example, prophets which didn't get into the Tanakh, and I'm always curious about how they were accepted, and if they were popular people, or if they were like, oh, a prophet, come and sit down, this is amazing. Or if they were like, how do we know you're for real?
Yes to all of that.
Okay.
So the career of the prophet was both a professional as well as a spiritual type of career, meaning that there were lots of people out there who called themselves and who were treated as prophets, who had no prophetic ability whatsoever. And we see them from time to time in showdowns between the true prophets and the prophets that are supporting the king and the ruling classes. Because generally speaking, the prophets that have remained as acknowledged as true prophets were not great friends with most of the rulers of Israel and Judah during the later days. Yes, during the days of David and Solomon, the prophets and king tended to get it on all right, but it goes downhill. Isaiah and Hezekiah are a little bit more friendly with each other, but those are about the only examples you get of friendly prophets. But you had records of many prophets who served the king. And these were people who would purport to say, oh, yes, God approves of what you're doing, Your Majesty. Yes, keep doing what you're doing. Oh, God thinks this is a great plan to attack this. It was a way of trying to have a stamp of religious authority on anything the king decided.
Oh.
But the Torah itself, in Deuteronomy quite explicitly, lays out the requirements for what a true prophet is. And you don't just accept everybody as a prophet just because they said they had a vision, or even because what they say sounds especially believable or godlike. You have to have the person give a sign, the person has to make predictions, the person has to be corroborated before we will accept them as a prophet. That doesn't mean that we are antagonistic to someone who says, I had a vision, as long as their vision is commensurate with Torah, as long as what they're saying is not saying, and therefore God said, we don't need to worry about Shabbat anymore. If somebody says that, then we know that that prophet is automatically false, regardless of what signs and wonders they do.
Okay. All right. So I think we're gonna crack on. It's a little, actually, as the first one that we do. This is kind of a little bit odd. I found it a little bit odd in that it's asking. There are going to be questions and actions that are asked for of the prophet here, which I think are pretty unique, actually, in the whole of the Tanakh. In that it's asked to make personal choices and examples, which you really don't see carried on in other places. But we're going to crack on. So it's Hosea in English. I believe it's Hoshea in. Or it's a better version in kind of an anglicized Hebrew.
Exactly. It should be the SH sound, Hoshea, in Hebrew.
And we are going to start, and it's Hosea, it's chapter 1 and verse 1. And one of the shallowest parts of this, which is going to be the most difficult for me, is pronunciation, so I'm going to be leaning on you quite a lot. Okay.
Well, we'll
yeah.
You know, we're not going to be strict about being perfect to the Hebrew pronunciation. We'll try to make sure that we get the correct pronunciation mentioned a few times, but I'm not going to sit here waving my finger at you correcting it.
That's good, okay. The word of the Lord. Oh, by the way, for the people at home, I'm reading from the version of the Complete Jewish Bible on Chabad.org. You should open up whichever one's most appropriate to you. I'm doing this because it's available to everybody. And it's very easy to read, and it's separated into verses very nicely.
And then once again, I always like to get a plug in, Sefaria.org. You can go to also there, and they'll also have multiple translation choices.
And it's got, and Sefaria will have a little dot next to each verse as well, where they have commentary. You can click the dot, and you can pick and pull from the commentary that you like.
Right.
It's very handy.
Although, unfortunately, for most of the books of the prophets, the vast majority of the commentary is still only in Hebrew.
Hebrew. Okay. Yeah, I was looking to see if I could get Google Translate to work for me on the page. If I figure that out, I'll let people how to make that work. Okay.
One little word of caution, though. Google Translate, when it tries to handle commentary, struggles. There's a certain technical language or way of speaking for commentators that Google Translate has not mastered just yet. So it can give you some rough ideas, but don't expect it to turn everything into perfectly clear English.
Great, okay. So I can treat that the same way a Spanish person treats an English tourist. English tourists, wherever they go, if they can't speak the language, they just separate the spaces between the words and talk a little bit louder. Where is toilet?
And start using bad English grammar.
Yes, that's right. Or start speaking in the perceived accent.
Yes.
Where is la toileta? It's very embarrassing. All right, we're going to crack on.
All right.
The word of the Lord, which came to Hosea, the son of Beri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. Now, I'm assuming that this is explaining to you what you're about to read, the word meaning a message, the Lord obviously being the creator, Hosea being the protagonist and the hero of the piece. Do we know much about his family other than who his father is here?
No.
Okay, fair enough. That's
his background does not really figure prominently in the prophecies that we have of him. So no, we don't have a lot about him. But really, the list of the kings is trying to give us a timeline for when he was operating. And you can find there are books and timelines online that take this information and will plot out a graph to let you know when the different prophets lived, or at least to our best estimate based on the information we've been given.
Now, I'm assuming that because it says, and in the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, and I know that often son doesn't necessarily mean son, but it means like in the line of sons.
Mm-hmm. The first 4 kings that are mentioned are the kings of Judah, whereas Jeroboam is the king of Israel. So we're talking about overlapping reigns between the southern and northern kingdoms.
At the beginning of the Lord's speaking to Hosea, I'm assuming that's Devar, is it? It's like the Lord's words, like we find all through the Torah when the message is given as Devar.
It's coming from the same root, yes.
Mm-hmm. The Lord has said to Hosea, "Go, take yourself a wife of harlotry and children of harlotry, for the land goes astray from following the Lord." There's a ton of stuff in here. Immediately, I'm confused in that he's being asked to do something that the Torah is telling him he should never do.
Yes and no. So he is being asked to be married to somebody that is going to be unfaithful to him, and whose children, because of that lack of faith, will be in question of whether or not they are actually his children. And this is going to be a reminder of the fact that the nation, which is really what they mean by the land, is likewise going after something other than their true spouse, their true partner, meaning God. And it's even sharper in the in the Hebrew, because that same root to mean to be a prostitute or whatever you wish to describe that. Is used for the actions of the land as well. Right? It's not going astray. It's whoring. The land is going to whore itself.
Wow. Okay. And this is talking about a current event, right? He's not saying in 100 years. He's saying now. It's like this is in the process.
Well, I mean, the land already had. In many respects, So this comes back to, I guess maybe we should take a quick moment to talk about the nature of prophecy and vision and prophetic symbolism, which is, although it's sometimes laid out as though the prophet is receiving instructions in a word-by-word text message from God that is, just so perfectly crystal clear and is coming as easily to him as an email would come to us. Our sages teach quite clearly that only one person ever had that kind of experience, and that was Moses. Only Moses saw God so clearly that it was without a veil between himself and God. Every other prophet saw God through visions and through dreams. And a more likely way to read what's happening here is that Hosea was married to this woman and was experiencing this crisis in his family, and God revealed to him through a vision that this was a crisis that paralleled what was going on in the nation, that he was suffering the same pangs that God was suffering by the betrayal of his people. Right. So he's asking himself, why am I married to this woman? Why is this happening? And God is answering him. And I do believe that this is a prophet, obviously, that it's not just him rationalizing it. But God is saying, you who have elevated yourself and refined your mind to the point that you can perceive me in a way that other people can't, you should know that what you are experiencing is also what I experience, and see in your life the message and the lesson that I wish my people would have and would heed in order that they can repair their life.
And the purpose, isn't it? The point of the prophets was to go out and pull the train back onto the track.
Yeah, and sometimes it was like pushing a train back on the rails. Pretty difficult task.
So he's told to go out and take a wife of harlotry. And then in verse 3, and he went and took Gomer, the daughter of, I'm going to say, Divlaim.
Divlaim, right.
Oh, nailed the B. I knew it was a V. Okay, great. And she conceived and bore him a son.
So the idea of Gomer, I mean, it's never explained fully in the in the text itself. but the idea that this is connected to the fact that that she is going to completely whore herself, that this is somebody who will be fully and finished in that process, is connected to the root. At least that's the way that Rashi tries to give an explanation to it.
I read it was something. I read a piece of commentary about this, and it was something to do with. I'm trying to say this in the right way. They made a comparison between pressing figs or people treading figs and sexual contact between two different bodies, and that she would be engaging in sexual activities in the same way as a group of people might be engaged on pressing the same amount of figs. It was quite explicit, and I'm trying to do it in a nice way.
You're being very delicate, yes.
Yeah, it's not. We're not just talking about one affair here. We're talking about multiple partners. And,
right. And what the commentators say is that this, when he married her, she would have been known as being a woman of this reputation. That this was not somebody that was later revealed to be like this, but this was somebody that Hoshea would have known had this reputation of being the harlot.
Okay. And the Lord said to him, and we just read that she conceived and bore him a son, and the Lord said to him, name him Jezreel, for in a short time I will visit the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and I will terminate the kingdom of the house of Israel. So first we need to talk about, I will visit the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu. Who are these two characters? And then we'll go on to the part about Israel.
All right, well, Jezreel was the area up in the north where the last king was slaughtered. And so that's the idea of the bloody deeds, of the blood of Jezreel. Jezreel is a geographic location. And the house of Jehu was the house that had assassinated, which was kind of normal up in the north. And that was why it was going to receive the comeuppance that had been earned by the deeds at Jezreel.
Okay, right. So they didn't act very well, and the cost of their actions is going to come back on them. Does that be fair?
Correct.
Okay, and then the big line here. So I was actually sent a message last week by a friend of mine who had a Christian friend message them, who said, don't you think that it's a shame that the house of Israel is no longer, isn't, why is this the case? Why hasn't Israel come back? Why haven't the lost tribes come back? Doesn't it make your faith in the Old Testament less? And I said, because I'd been preparing for this, I said, you just have to read the first four, and it says explicitly there that this is something that's going to happen. If anything, it should give you more faith in what the prophets have written, not less. But I will carry on. I will visit the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, I'm learning, and I will terminate the kingdom of the house of Israel. So again, can you give us just in a nutshell? I know that the people of Israel have separated at this point, and you have a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom.
And that's really what you need to know at the time. And what you need to also remember is that according to the Chronicles in the books of Kings, and then again in the books of Chronicles at the end of the Tanakh, the northern kingdom was wholly terrible. Whereas the southern kingdom, there were a few kings that were decent, and some kings that were meh, and then a lot that were bad. In the northern kingdom, they were all bad. They were all terrible. And so the northern kingdom is going to eventually implode and destroy itself if they don't change. I mean, that's an important reminder that the prophecies were always being given conditionally. As we'll read further along, God wants the northern kingdom, he wants the southern kingdom to return. He doesn't want them to be destroyed. But at the moment, that's the way things are going.
Yeah, there's always a callback, isn't there? I mean, there's no point going out and God saying, you're all doomed. Don't worry about it. because that's just the way it's going to be. Is that the whole
Right.
point? I think, yeah, is to pull them back.
Exactly,
So
and we're gonna get to that. After we get through this initial first chapter of pain, we're gonna get the callback later.
and it shall come to pass on that day that I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. And so I'm reading this and I'm thinking bow as in bow and arrow, but then I thought maybe bow as in boats.
Nope, you're right. Bow and arrow.
Okay, good. And so we're gonna. It's taken the power out of Israel and the force and the strength.
Right. I mean, it's a sign of the military strength. So they're defending themselves. They're surviving by their military might. I mean, without God, what else could be defending their borders? And what he's basically saying is that you will lose in the Jezreel Valley, and you will eventually be overcome.
And she conceived again and bore a daughter, and he said to him, "Name her Lo Ruhumah." Oh, I think that was okay.
Yeah.
For I will not continue to grant clemency to the house of Israel, but I will mete out their portion to them.
Right, and of course we're getting a play on word here, right? Lo Ruhama comes from the same root as Od Arachem. I will not give. I will not continue to be compassionate or merciful to them.
And I know very little Hebrew, but what I do know is that lo is a negative form, right? It's like no
Right.
or not, or it's pushing something away.
Right. So I mean, you could really translate the name like Lo Ruhama as being like no mercy, no compassion, meaning that God is not going to have any more compassion on the house of Israel.
But to the house of Judah, that's the southern kingdom, I will grant clemency, and I will save them by the Lord their God. I will not save them with the bow, with the sword, with war, with steeds, or with riders. So this is an expression that Judah and the country will survive, and it's going to happen in such a way that no one's going to have any doubt that it was divine.
Right, and they're not going to have those victories, and indeed that's what we eventually find, is that the southern kingdom, Judah, is also destroyed, but they are returned in a way that is completely unrelated to their own military strength.
Very good. And she weaned Lo Ruhumah, and she conceived and bore a son. I like that that's in there, and I'm wondering if there's more reason to the fact that they mentioned the weaning, but it does give us some sort of timeline. There's probably about a year in the difference between those two there. And
Actually, more than that. Children were weaned much older in the ancient times.
Okay, great.
So maybe 2 or 3 even.
And is the tradition or is the understanding that there was a kind of a one prophetic download, or may he have got information? I know this is a ridiculous question because we can't ask him. But I mean, so she has the daughter, and then he gets another insight into God's will in this occasion, or
right. I mean, like you said, we can't ask, but definitely we get an idea that there certainly over the course of the book of Hosea is that he is receiving multiple visions and insights from God.
I'm asking as many dumb questions as I can because if I don't ask, no one will. And he said, name him Lo Ami. Now, Ami is a phrase I'm familiar with as well. Mm-hmm. For you are not my people, and I will not be yours, which is like a little mirror there of Ruth.
Yes, the inverse of what Ruth said. And it's also, you have to see through all of these, the pain that a father would feel of naming these children without knowing whether they are his. And that suffering that he knows that this woman in his life is doing things with other guys, that makes it so that he doesn't even know who is in his house, and God is telling him to name them these rather unflattering terms.
Yeah, and he's having to raise his kids too, right? And look at them and treat them like his children when he's not really sure whether he's the father. And yeah.
But we're going to see that then turned around in chapter 2.
Which we are turning the page over to now. So that's the northern kingdom. In the meantime, meanwhile, in Judah,
there was also some mention of the southern kingdom there. with the idea that they would not be completely broken and their victory would not come through military. But yeah, we got a lot of focus on the north.
And the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which shall neither be measured nor counted. And it shall come to pass that, instead of saying of them, you are not my people, it shall be said to them, the children of the living God.
It's quite simple, but I mean, we're picking up where the last chapter left off. And after all of that, you're not my people, there's no compassion, you're dying in the Jezreel. Now we have this, no, actually they're going to be as numerous as the sands in the sea. And instead of being called not my people, they're going to be called the people of the children of God, of the living God. So
there's a little echo there as well of the promise that was made to Abraham about his descendants, which I think is quite nice.
It's a rather big echo, exactly. And this idea that they will be, the children of El Chai, this living God, is saying that no matter what you have done, you will be accepted as my children. Again, also, you have to remember constantly the parallel that Hoshea is feeling in his own family life, that no matter what has happened, the children will be his children. And that he is going through that same feeling of God, of despite the betrayal, I will show compassion, I will show love, I will raise them.
Now, it goes on in verse 2, and the children of Judah and the children of Israel shall be gathered together, and they shall appoint for themselves one head, and they shall go up from the land, for great is the day of Jezreel. Now, okay, this is where I get a bit stupid. But if are we talking now about the time when they're brought together, when the tribes come back? Okay,
exactly.
So we skip forward. Fair enough.
Right.
Okay.
We are now talking about end of days type prophecies.
Say to your brethren Ami and to your sisters Rehumah. Now, so we have low Ami and low Rehumah. So now the negativity is gone.
Exactly, and we're calling them our brothers, right? So we are. One of the most bitter parts of this is that everyone was giving recriminations against each other. And now we are calling each other brothers, and we are saying, you are my people, you are lovingly accepted, you are being shown compassion and mercy. It's the flip, but it's coming within ourselves.
In 4, strive with your mother, strive, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. And let her remove her harlotries from her face, and her adulteries from between her breasts.
What's happening here with Hoshea is that the focus is on the next generation, right? The kids. And they are going to reconcile, and they are going to realize that they are loved by God, loved by their father. And they are going to recognize that what their mother did, meaning the earlier generations of idolater in Israel, or Gomer herself, was wrong, and they should strive with her, they should criticize her, they should rebuke, they should challenge what she did, because while she was doing that, she was not being a faithful wife, and therefore he was not being a loving husband. And instead, she needs to, this is what they need to tell her, that she needs to put away her harlotry, her betrayal, she needs to stop worshiping other gods, and she needs to cast it out from the way that she's been living.
Lest I strip her naked and leave her as on the day she was born, and I will make her like a desert, and I will set her like an arid land, and cause her to die of thirst. That's unpleasant. But I can see, but it's very poetic language. I mean, it's not leaving anything to the imagination.
No, and this is, the stark contrast that, there is the chance that the husband, whether it be Hoshea or whether it be God, will finally and ultimately abandon the harlot. And this is what would happen. Would God do that?
And I will not pity her children, for they are the children of harlotries. So
and again, the word pity that's being translated there, the arachem, is going back to that same Rahama name.
Oh, so I would not give mercy to her children would be another way of saying that. Okay, well, this is going really well. I'm very happy with this. For their mother played the harlot, she who conceived them behaved shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers, those who give me bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drinks. So that's it's really talking about her selling herself for material gain, for furthering herself, for furthering her nest.
Hmm.
Uh,
And yeah, this is, the line between harlot and just somebody who enjoys the company of many different
mm,
people is a little fuzzy in this story. But definitely she seems to be plied with gifts by those that she visits. And what's being talked about here is that she went off and thought, these are the people who are supplying things for me. So if I want anything, I'll go to them, and they'll they're my sugar daddy.
mm.
And what God is trying to drive home here is that no, they're not really the ones that supported you. And God obviously is saying, if you think your idols are what has supported you and enabled you to get ahead in life, and that's where your gifts come from, you are missing the point of who is really supporting you.
Very good. I was just taking that in.
Yeah.
Just Daniel sprung to mind. I think there's a similar echo in parts of Daniel, where it's the same thing about the king, and the king thinks he's getting everything from his own merits,
Hmm.
and the creator is saying, "You think that you get that through your ways? No, I'm allowing you to have that." Okay.
I mean, it goes all the way back to why we do Birkat HaMazon, the blessing after their meal. It says very clearly, you will eat, you will be satisfied, and you will forget your God. So therefore, we have to bless after we eat, not before we eat. I mean, we bless before we eat, but the Torah is more concerned with blessing after we eat, because it's when we are full and happy that we are more likely to forget God. And this is what's happening here.
Therefore I will close off your way with thorns, and I shall make a fence against her, and she shall not find her paths. And she shall pursue her lovers and not overtake them. And she shall seek them and not find them, and she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better for me than now. So essentially, the gifts and the things that she was getting will dry up, and she won't be able to go to those people anymore. Right. Those positive effects that she was getting won't be there, and she'll cower and crawl back to where she had it good at the beginning, which was her first husband.
I mean, it's not even sure yet in the text, and you can read it both ways, of whether she is crawling back or whether she's just going, okay, well, you know what? If I can't get my lovers, then I'll just go back to that other guy, the schnook, who he'll take me back. And God is trying to balance that, right? That's one of the tensions in the whole prophecy of Hoshea, of balancing between rebuke and acceptance. Mm-hmm. That God wants the people to understand what was wrong that they did, but he doesn't want them to believe that it's over, because he wants them to return. But how do you get people to return without condoning what they have done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a difficult question, right? Because, I mean, is it then okay for a people to say, sure, we'll just go back to the God we had in the first place, he'll take us back, it won't be a problem. It's kind of taken them for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And nothing to stop it from just turning around and happening again.
Right. Yeah. Okay, from verse 10. But she did not know that I gave her the corn, the wine, and the oil, and I gave her much silver and gold. But they made it for Baal.
In this case, we're really moving more into the metaphor of Israel as the wife. That they turned around and used all the things that God had given them as gifts and as idols for these foreign gods, Baal being the most important. And we're going to come back to that specific title in just a few bits.
So they were re-gifters.
Exactly. They didn't even stop to think of where they got the gift originally. It's like, I'm going to make an idol. I have this wonderful gold, and I'm going to make the idol because this God is going to help me. It's like, well, who helped you get the gold that you're using to make the idol that you want to help you to make you happy? You've already got what you needed, and now you're turning around and wasting it on something that you think you need, but you've got what you need. I mean, the illogic that he's pointing out of the betrayal of Israel is just so palpable. Did you stop to think where you got the stuff that you're using to make idols? And of course, he's also pointing out that it isn't the idols that supported us, it's us that are wasting on idols. So we've gotten nothing from them. We've only wasted what we had and what was given to us by God on the idols. So it's a complete perversion of what the relationship was supposed to be.
And if you at home have enjoyed this and you want to know what's going to happen next, then tune in next week, where we will continue the adventures of Hoshea and his adulterous wife, and the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom, and what happens with those. This just gets better and better. This text, and it's just on so many different levels, and it covers so many different subjects, which are completely valid to the history of Israel as well as your spiritual walk,
And very valid and relevant to everyone living today.
Right. Yeah. So thank you very much, Rabbi Neely, for giving us your time and your insights.
Thank you.
And we hope that you'll all join us again for our next program, which will be up in a matter of days. So stay tuned.